Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so much for joining in. And congratulations, you're still alive. And I'm not referring to the interesting world health situation we have in March 2020. What I'm talking about is that if you're still alive, if you're still in a body, according to the teachings of Bruno Groening, which I consider to be the most accurate expression of the teachings of Christ I've ever come across. What that means, if you're still alive, that you're still willing and there's still opportunity for you to grow and learn spiritually. So congratulations, like high five, you're still willing to grow and learn. This is such an essential aspect of life that, according to Bruno Groening, if one is no longer willing or able to learn or grow, that one's life will actually come to an end. That's how significant um, life learning is. Now, I'm not talking about learning information, though that can be part of it. And I'm not talking about being spiritual, which that can be a part of it. What I'm talking about is learning how to live life. In essence, how to dance, to do the dance of life. So, welcome to all you willing and able learners. And that includes me. I woke up this morning, which means I'm still willing and able to learn and grow spiritually. So okay, it's like we've got a little checklist. The first part of the checklist, am I still willing and learning to grow? Yes. Okay, good. Then the next thing on our checklist is, am I full of good energy? It's essential to do this dance of life, to have an abundance of good life energy, to be full of it. Part of the reason why, Bruno Groening pointed this out over and over again, and to some extent, you can also find the same theme very clearly expressed in the Gospels, is that in life here on earth, we have to contend with this very strong force. Bruno very simply called it bosse, evil, or he went so far sometimes as to call it the devil or Satan. And of course, when we look at the Gospels, we can see evidence that Christ used almost the exact same words, that there's this very strong, powerful adversary, in a sense, that we have to contend with. Now, Bruno Groening very clearly said to contend with this adversary, to rise above evil. We absolutely need to be full of good energy. And let's keep in mind that Bruno Groening spoke of life here on earth as a school, but he also called it a play school. So, when we think of an adversary, it doesn't necessarily have to mean a bloody, violent conflict. It can also be a game or a sport. And Bruno Groening, I want to say hinted, but sometimes he directly said, this is a play school, that there is a sense of in some mysterious way, a sense of play to this, while it's very simultaneously very serious, that life is meant to be, that while the conflict or struggle, he called it a Krieg, battle, that it is a struggle, a battle, a war, but also that it's meant to be done with a sense of, I'll just keep it really simple. He said that life is a play school. Simultaneously, he said that it's very important not to play with evil. That while this may be a play school, that we absolutely do not want to play with evil. I'm going to find his exact words if I can. And what he meant, I'm just going to have to paraphrase. He said that, what he meant by don't play with evil is that if we don't take evil seriously, then we are playing with it, and that is no good. Well, I'm just thinking I'm going to just read his words exactly. I like to do my best to go from memory, and then here we go. Do not play with life, but in life. There we go. Life is meant to be something we play with, in, not with. Life is no game. The game lies within life. That means live according to the rules of life. The real game of life has rules to it. So, and if you notice the first couple of minutes, I was a little hesitant, and that's because I wasn't remembering Bruno's exact words. So it's this sense of there is a sense of game and play, but only when we approach it a certain way. I'll continue. The good game starts with good thoughts. The evil game, to the contrary, starts with evil thoughts. One could call this life on earth a play school. In order to be able to play the right way, you have to be proficient in the rules. If we don't know the rules, we actually can't play in the right way. We'll play in the wrong way, the very painful way. The good, the divine, lies within the game. As long as you stick to the rules, it is a true game. But whenever you bring into play even just one bad thought, then it is no longer a game. Only one bad thought is enough to end the game straight away. So, how interesting is that? Life is a game. Or when approached from the proper perspective and with the correct understanding, then life can be a game if we know the rules, if we live by these rules. If we don't, then it's no longer a game, or as Bruno said, then it becomes a bad game, an unfun game. So let's really reflect on all of this, that it's possible, even in March 2020, when things are pretty intense, that life can be a game if we play properly. But part of playing properly is taking evil seriously. I can't find the specific quote I was looking for, but in essence, Bruno said, don't play with evil. That means, I'm just going to have to paraphrase it. Don't play with evil. That means not taking evil seriously. So the moment we're not taking evil seriously, then we're actually playing with evil, and then we're involved in the unfun game. So let's ask to learn how to play properly. I want to play. Who doesn't want to play and have joy and have fun? Who doesn't want to have a fun, joyful life? Yes, a fun, joyful life in serving and learning and growing in a fun, joyful way. Sign me up. So let's ask, please, God, beloved Christ, our dear friend Bruno, please help us learn how to play. Please help us learn the rules of the game of life. And now you can see, if someone's not willing to learn the rules of life, then they don't belong here. Someone who's not, it's not my job to determine who that is. That's God's job. And we can see why Bruno Groening said, if someone's not willing to learn anymore, then they literally experience what he calls an early recall. They're taken out of life. If someone's not willing to play by the rules of a particular sport, what happens? In sporting terms, they get ejected from the game. According to Bruno Groening, the day, the time, the second of our, oh, he never said second, but the time of our death, of our leaving this body is already set, and we're here to learn. But if we're not willing to learn, then we get ejected earlier. So let's be willing to learn. So, one of the fundamentals to play well is to be full of good life energy. So let's take in some of that now. But before we take it in, we have to separate ourselves from evil. So please, to do all this, please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards, back in an upright position. Not stiff, not slouched, and if possible, not leaning against your chair, though if you need to, please do. Then close your eyes, and now hand over every burden, specifically every illness, meaning separate yourself from the illness and from the burden to the point where you don't even have the thought anymore that you have it. Let's say you have a cold right now. Let's say you have a stuffy nose, a sore throat, a headache, you're tired. What I'm asking you to do is to literally separate yourself from the thought so that you don't even have the thought that you have a cold anymore. As you do this, the symptoms may vanish. If the symptoms don't vanish, then just give over the interpretation, the thought that you have an illness. And there's a few more steps to it, but that's the first step, really separating ourselves from the thought of illness. Now, put your entire attention on your healing. Meaning, there's many ways to interpret that. I understand it to mean um, to just see and feel yourself as healthy and to take on, so we've given away the perspective of illness. Now we're taking on the perspective of healing. That healing will happen and is happening. Now ask in your own way. I do it very simply like this. Please, Bruno, please, Christ, help me receive the healing stream, the healing life energy. Please ask now. And then observe your body, noticing the sensations. And knowing and trusting that every sensation now is a step towards your healing. Noticing what you feel, understanding that every sensation is a part of your healing. If you have a thought of illness arise, I just did, firmly give it away and ask for a true thought and take on a thought of healing. So I'm going to talk and read a little, and I hope everyone's going to keep tuning in. You're welcome to keep your eyes closed. I don't do this on YouTube because I want people to look at me. I do it because it's easy to then have this recorded for others to watch. So please feel no obligation to look at the screen. Please, according to Bruno Groening, your only obligation is to seek God. So I'm going to read a little German and then do my best to translate it. So Bruno said, "So haben Sie doch die Pflicht und Schuldigkeit, sofort Verbindung zu Gott aufzunehmen." You have, after all, the Pflicht is the first word, easily translated as duty, but that doesn't quite cut it. Because in modern day, in the 21st century, the word duty is almost never used anymore. Pflicht in German, it's very, very, it's a serious word. It's not a word you would say casually. You wouldn't say, you have the duty to be on time, unless you being on time had to do with saving a life or protecting a life. Pflicht is a little bit more like take care of your children if you're a parent. Not do harm if you're a doctor. All doctors take an oath. Follow orders if you're in the military. So this thing that Bruno is talking about is quite serious. Pflicht can also mean that which is mandatory. It also means mandatory. And I was speaking with someone today who's a native German speaker, and she and I felt that obligation is really the better translation. So according to Bruno Groening, and we're going to get to the obligation is to be connected to God. So we have the same level of obligation that a parent does to a child, that a doctor does to do their best to take care of a patient, that a soldier has to protect their country or to follow orders. That's the level of obligation and duty in the true sense of the word, according to Bruno Groening, that we all have to take in this divine energy, which is another way of saying to be connected to God. Now he also said, so haben Sie doch die Pflicht und Schuldigkeit. Schuldigkeit is the word that's almost never used in modern German. It also means duty, but in a much deeper sense. First, it's hard to translate because it's really not used anymore, and it's a very subtle word. Now, the essence of it is to give one's entire life to something. We can say that Bruno Groening had and fulfilled a Schuldigkeit. He gave his entire life to his mission. It's hard to even talk about. We don't really have a word for it in English. Another way is to fully fulfill one's function. I'm just going to have to look at my notes because it's very hard to translate. To completely in the sense of it also means that one has really fulfilled one's purpose, in the sense of that someone is so completely trustworthy because they're so just singularly dedicated to their purpose. That's probably a reasonably accurate translation. So Bruno, just like Christ, called us to have singleness of purpose in our devotion to God, to be connected to God and to serve God. And I argue that those two become one at a certain point. But singularity of purpose. That's it's mandatory, obligation, duty. These are very abstract words. And Bruno Groening was an absolute master of the German language. And he chose his words very carefully. Um, so let's really reflect on all this. That this is what we're called to. Christ said, Christ spoke of himself as a servant of God, and I believe called each and every one of us to utterly be devoted to and serve God. And let's keep in mind that Bruno clarified for us what God is and isn't, is life and love. So let's reflect on all this and take in more of this divine energy, receive it, absorb it. Become aware of negative thoughts, giving those away. So Bruno said that we have a Pflicht, something that's mandatory, and a Schuldigkeit, a duty and obligation to which we need to give our whole life to, our whole life to. But what is this Pflicht and Schuldigkeit? Well, Bruno said, sofort Verbindung zu Gott aufzunehmen. To immediately, not in the future, to right here, right now, to take in, this divine connection, this link, communion with God. So according to Bruno Groening, that is what's mandatory. That is what we need to give our whole life to, and not sometime in the future, but to do it right now. Bruno doesn't mess around, and he asks a lot of us. But he points out how life operates and what we need to do if we want to be happy and healthy and harmonious. It's quite simple. Tuning in is not complicated. Taking in this Verbindung, this communion, this link, this connection with God, not difficult, but to give our whole lives to it. Also, abstractly, very, very simple, but not so easy. Not so easy. And yet, Bruno Groening pointed out that what's needed is to make a decision to do that. And if we really make that decision, then we will very slowly be brought back into the place of alignment, where that's how we're living. I personally, have made that decision, and then I struggle moment by moment to really live by it. That's funny. I opened, and here's the sentence I opened to. As I've already said, are prepared to walk on the path or take up the faith and to live by it. Here's the full quote of Bruno's. I let you know that all of you who live in this great divine world are simply children of God. The only physician, the physician of all humankind, is and remains our Lord God. Only He can help, but He only helps the people who have found their way back to Him. Or, as I have said, are prepared to walk on the path, to take up this faith and live by it. So, and elsewhere, and if I can find it, I'll read it. Bruno spoke about making this decision to really follow God. There it is. He said, as you have now become obedient to God, that's my translation, is we've made that decision to follow God. As you have now become obedient to God, you slowly get back to the place from which you were displaced. So us as individuals and the human race as a whole, we started playing by making up our own rules, not following the divine rules. And that got us misaligned, or as Bruno Groening said, displaced. At a certain point, I got sick and tired of it, and individuals get sick and tired, and they say, okay, God, I want to follow you. And then Bruno Groening says we slowly get moved back to the place from which we were displaced. So there's this thing we need to do right now, take up the connection to God and maintain it. In fact, Bruno said that. He said, take up the connection to God and don't let go of it. And it's also a path and a process. So let's just strive to do it more and more. And just one of my favorite spiritual quotes is keep coming back. We get really connected to God, and then I get really connected to God, and then something happens and I get off-centered. And then I come back, I'm like, commitment, and then I get off-centered, generally because I take in a negative thought. And that's just part of the spiritual process. Bruno called it sanctification, Heiligung, of becoming more and more holy over time. So today I'm going to begin our closing. So today I looked at we looked at that life. Uh, I'm going to get the German so I can read the original, but in essence, there is a way in which life can be a game, and there's a way in which we can lose that sense of game and play. And it all has to do with knowing the rules of life, how life operates, and living by it. One of the key rules is which thoughts we take in. If we take in negative thoughts, then Bruno Groening said the game is over. Now, not have a negative thought, meaning we become aware of a negative thought. It's when we say yes to a negative thought, when we aufnehmen, when we take it in or receive it. Then Bruno Groening says the game ends straight away. And then we have to do a little clearing and repent of that untrue thought. And so, one of the fundamental rules of the game is to stay full of good energy. And Bruno taught this very simple and pleasurable way to do that. Einstellen, aligning, attuning ourselves with God. From there, it's easier to repel the negative thoughts. And this, while it is a game, it's so serious that Bruno compared it to use the words flicked, something that's mandatory. It's only mandatory if we want to be happy, healthy, and harmonious because God has given free will. So it's in essence, it's kind of like, a soldier can be conscripted, forced into the draft, or a soldier can say, hey, I want to sign up for this duty. Bruno Groening is very adamant that we all have free will and none of us are forced to follow God. So it's if we want to be happy, healthy, and harmonious, then we have a mandatory duty to take up the connection to God and to really give our whole life, our whole being. Bruno used the German word Schuldigkeit, to just give our whole self to the spiritual path. This is, in my understanding, something we firmly decide, and then we have to, and then I'll just speak for myself. This is my understanding. It's something I've decided to do, and then day by day, have to because I want to be connected to God. Then day by day, I have to strive and struggle and fight to, as Christ said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, to give my whole life to the spiritual path. Now, what that looks like for each one of us as individuals is going to be different. This is part of how I do that. I offer these things via YouTube, but that doesn't mean everyone will or should. Each of us has to follow God and get our own guidance. For the specifics, there are certain spiritual practices I do. That doesn't mean everyone has to or should. The ways in which we Verbindung, get connected or linked to God, the specifics, and then the ways in which we serve life, that's going to be different for each one of us. But if the teachings of Christ are accurate, which I believe they are, and if what Christ taught is true, and I'm convinced it is, and if what Bruno Groening shared was an accurate expression of the teachings of Christ, which I'm utterly convinced of, then all of us, if we want to be happy and healthy and harmonious, if we want to truly live as children of God, we are children of God, but to live as that, then we have to find our way of being connected to God and being in service to all of life. Those things are not negotiable in my understanding of what Christ taught and shared. Woo! So I'd like to thank everyone who came by and watched this live and everyone who watched the recording of this. Welcome to Magdalena. Thanks for saying hello, Germana. Hello, beautiful divine souls. Um, and I'm gonna make a video about my requests for sharings during meetings, but I'm gonna really ponder on it. During meetings, I ask, I believe what's highest and best for the harmony of the meeting and the flow of this energy, much less to support me. It's a lot to do to read from Bruno, to stay connected to the energy. I'm doing this through technology to check in with the comments. There's a lot for me to do. And so not only for the well-being of the meeting, but the well-being for me, I ask that other than people saying hello or sharing quotes of Bruno or sharing their own experience, that they um, refrain from other comments. It's not a big deal. Thank you, Gerald. It's I need to post some. I just need to get really clear and then make a request. And I'm open to feedback. I'm not God and I'm not a master. I'm going to share what I think creates the most harmonious community hours, and I welcome feedback. Um, and I apologize to you, Gerald, and to everyone. I felt for the last couple weeks that I needed to offer that, and I haven't. Um, so my apologies on that. I'm doing the best I can, and appreciate it, Gerald, and um, it's actually, what happened is really is just going to help make these gatherings better. So thank you. All right, dear friends, I'm going to close this out with a prayer. Beloved Maker, God, that which created us, Source. Beloved Christ, our dear friend Bruno, please help us to be humble and recognize our need for God. Please help us to deepen our faith and recognize and to just become reliant on God. Please help us to decide to give our whole life, all of our being, to connecting to God and serving to God. Please help us to make that decision. Please help us to become aware of anything, thought, word, deed, that disconnects us from God, and to become aware of that, and habits, and to be honest with ourselves, and then be willing to let that go, and then humbly to ask God to do so. And just right here, right now, let's ask that anything that interferes with us connecting to God and being of service and living life the way God would have us live, that it be removed. Please help us to make right any wrongs we've done, and to moment by moment be aware of our thoughts, and to firmly say no to thoughts that aren't good, and to check each thought. Is this a good thought, a not good thought, a helpful thought, an unhelpful thought? And to say no to the ones that aren't helpful, and then to ask for a good thought. Please help us to give our life to the striving to be connected to God and asking for guidance in all things. And please help us to rigorously practice these ideas and principles in all aspects of our life, to seek God's will in every aspect of our life, every aspect of our behavior. And please, God, please, Christ, and our dear friend Bruno, please forgive us. Free us from all evil, so that we can be of service to others and help them to become free from all evil. Thank you so much for joining in, everyone. Take care. Much love.